How bad was that draft actually? Welcome. This is the Niner Narrative. I am Chunder Boy, and I will be your host this evening. Where to start with the 2026 NFL Draft? So I wanted to take a day or two before I did this podcast because I wanted to let it settle because I was frustrated. Like so many others, I was frustrated with how that draft unveiled. I started out thrilled. The 49ers were moving back. They were picking up some assets, putting themselves in a really good place to pick up an extra player, maybe two in the earlier, round 2, round 3, early round 4, something like that, where they could develop more and better talent. And then they picked a wide receiver that was slated to go an entire round later. Then they picked an end, an edge, a DPR in the 70s that's literally only going to be a DPR. He's a pass rusher. He's not good against the run. He's small. He's 25 years old. Like, okay, maybe I kind of get it, but not really. Felt like a reach as well. Then they dropped the atomic bomb on all of us, and they drafted another fucking running back in the 3rd round. Oh, and it's a running back who didn't even get invited to the combine. Oh, and only 2 other running backs had gone off the board in the 1st round, both of them. So it's literally the first running back off the board other than the 2 quote-unquote premium running backs in this draft. I almost had a meltdown. I was on with Coach. He kind of had a mini meltdown live on stream. And the entire experience was so frustrating. And I didn't want to do a podcast where I just jumped on and started blasting the 49ers with my frustration. Because A, that's not fair. And B, the internet is forever. And I would have to basically stand on business. And I wanted to make sure that if I was going to stand on business with this draft, that I was what I actually felt and not just what I felt when I was locked into my frustration. So now I've had a couple of days. Now I've processed. And now I want to give you my take because it wasn't – the NFL is always the same thing. It's never as good as you think it is when you're on top, and it's never as bad as it feels when you're not. And this draft is the epitome of that phrase. So I think the first thing that we need to do, this entire channel is based on bringing context to the conversation. There are narratives about all of these things, each player, the draft as a whole, the 49ers draft history. We're going to get into all of that. But all these narratives are being driven already. They're going crazy. And I just wanted to try to bring some context. You have the Lombardis of the world who want to show you the best version of all this, what's the bright side of it all, and use whatever stats and metrics he can find to support that narrative. Then you have the Grant Cohns of the world that have a little bit more of a skeptical look at things and who want to they want the 49ers to answer for why they keep doing this. Why do we keep reaching on picks? Why do we keep taking players that it seems like we're the only ones that like? And why do we keep fumbling these drafts when we're in good position to take really good players that can totally change our trajectory moving forward? And it's like, I know that Grant gets a lot of flack for always, I guess, being pessimistic or a lot of people think he's a hater, and it's like, no, he has a healthy skepticism for how the 49ers operate, and he calls it out. And this particular situation, he's on good footing. he's on really good footing. So you've got kind of both ends of the spectrum, depending on who you're watching. There's a million other content creators out there that are kind of trying to help everybody process what we just witnessed. And I just wanted to try to bring some context to the process. Like how should we go about as fans? How should we go about processing something like this? Because I feel let down like so many other people do, but I also can objectively look at some of the positives that came out of this draft as well. I can look objectively at some of these players who I think are going to be very impactful for the 49ers. So two things can be true at once, and we're going to try to comb through all that. So first things first, what is a good draft? Okay. This is something that I think commonly gets misunderstood, both by regular fans, by pundits, by content creators, and just pretty much everybody that talks about football. So there's two sort of inherent facts when it comes to a good draft, bad draft. Number one, very few rookies have a huge impact in year one. If you have a bunch of holes in your roster and you're expecting to draft a bunch of people who are going to start and make an impact in year one, you're delusional. Look at the track record. Is there a team every now and then that gets 3 or 4 rookies to like play meaningful starting minutes in year one? It does happen. It's rare. There are drafts where a team literally gets 5 or 6 guys out of one draft who all are like high-end starters. High-end starters, and like 1 or 2 of these guys is future like home run draft where you get 5 or 6 guys. But those are the unicorn drafts. Those are not like that's a super grade A+ draft, 10 out of 10. That's not That's not just a good draft. That's an exceptional draft. It's an outlier. So what does a good draft look like? So for me, a good draft is batting 500. If you have 6 draft picks, 3 of them need to contribute to your team in a meaningful way. If you have 10 draft picks, 5 of them need to contribute to your team in a meaningful way. That's a good draft. Now, when I say contribute in a meaningful way, what do I mean? Well, let's break it down. In any draft, so to me, and I could be wrong, I could be totally off. Please feel free to comment and tell me if I'm just totally off the mark here. To me, a good draft, whether you have 10 picks, and I know I'm going to contradict myself here a little, but if you have 10 picks or if you have 4 picks, don't matter. If you get 1 perennial all-pro, 1 quality starter who's starting by the end of year 2, and at least 2 role players, whether that's special teams or a rotational defensive lineman, or maybe you got a swing tackle in the 7th round or something like that, right? Okay, that's a good draft. If you use 7 or 8 picks and got those 4 players, that's a good draft. If you got 10 picks, maybe you should get 1 more, right? Maybe another starter, maybe a couple of extra role players, right? You got to hit a little bit better than just those 4, right? I don't want to totally contradict myself, but essentially that's what a good draft looks like. A great draft is basically double that, right? 2 like perennial all-pro type players, 2 high-end, like good quality starters that are starting by the end of year 2, and then 2 or 3 like role player depth guys, right? That's like 7 players out of one draft that are all contributing to your team, and you have multiple players that are contributing at a super high level. That is a home run draft that almost never happens. It almost never happens. You might get like 1 team per year, and it's probably not even per year where you have a draft that good. 1 team getting 2 Hall of Fame caliber, like all-pro, perennial all-pro caliber players, getting 2 of them in one draft, even without all the rest of it. Just getting those 2 players in one draft class doesn't happen all that often. there are 30 opportunities. I'm sorry, there are 32 opportunities every draft for a team to do that, and you might get one that pulls it off. That's how hard the draft is. Now, with that in mind, that's the macro. That's out here. Another part of drafting is value. If you got those 4 players all in the 7th round, that's kind of a crazy draft. I don't know if that kind of a draft has literally ever happened. It's that crazy of an event. It's probably never happened. We get a bunch of late round guys that are all hits and all the guys before them all sucked. That just doesn't really happen. Meanwhile, the flip side of that coin, if you get a perennial All-Pro, let's say you're drafting 10th overall. You get a perennial All-Pro at 10. In the second round, 10th pick in the second round, you get a quality starter. And in the third round, 10th overall, you get a rotational or depth piece or something like that. That's a solid draft. It almost doesn't matter what the rest of the guys that you draft do. If you hit those 3 picks every year, you will build a championship contender. You have 3 or 4 of those drafts in a row, you've built the core of a championship contender. That's your kind of C+, B-, maybe B+. I don't know how, fucking hate the grading systems. But that's your kind of like, that's what you're trying to hit. If you get more than that, you crushed it. So that's macro. That's what a good draft looks like, regardless of team. Now, value. If you get those same 4 players, but you get all of them with value. So you get in the first round, you're picking at the end of the first round, and you get a guy who is a top 10 type of player and becomes a perennial All-Pro, right? If you get a Joe Staley at 27 overall, that actually makes that draft that much better, because that caliber of player who's a perennial All-Pro, who's considered one of the best in his position for a decade, that player should not come from pick. Those players are expected to come from the top of the first round, right? So it makes that draft a little bit better. Or if you get a Fred Warner in the 3rd round, right? You bring in a guy, he was a converted safety to linebacker. You have a vision for him. You develop him. It works out. He turns into a perennial All-Pro by year 3. Gets paid a huge contract. He's the best linebacker in all of football. You got him in the 3rd round. That makes that draft class that much better. Even if all you did was hit those same four players we talked about, that draft is more of like an A- because you got that quality of a player in the 3rd round. So value also matters. Where did you get all these players is part of the equation. Even one of the tropes that drives me crazy. We'll touch on this a little bit more later, but I want to kind of introduce it now. One of the tropes that drives me crazy is if the player is really good, it doesn't matter where you drafted them. And that's not accurate. And I'll explain why in a little bit, but that's just where you drafted them is part of the equation of whether or not you had a good draft or you did a good job of maneuvering the board. All of those things come into play when we're talking about, did you have a good draft? Okay. Then you have things like scheme. Okay. If you draft a player who's excellent in college, has all the physical attributes, but doesn't fit your scheme, it might flame out. He might go on to be really good somewhere else. Does that mean that you picked a bad player? No, not if he turns out to actually be really good. You just picked a player that doesn't really fit your scheme or wasn't able to adjust to the things you're asking him to do. Having a vision for how this player is going to fit into your team, into your locker room, into your scheme, into your community. All of these things are factors that teams have to look at when they're drafting players. We can't sit here and armchair quarterback this thing, armchair GM every draft. There are so many factors that these teams have to consider. All we do is watch some film, probably not as much as the guys on TV do. I have a full-time job. I try to watch film if I can. I try to watch, at least watch highlights and stuff, at least get an idea of what the guy is at his best. But I'm not an expert at watching film. I've been watching football a long time, and I feel like I've got a pretty good grasp of what good looks like and what bad looks like. But I'm not some sort of film expert the way these scouts are. And it's literally their full-time job. My full-time job is working for a pool company. That's my full-time job. That's what I do 60, 70 hours a week. These guys are crushing film 90 hours a week. What kind of a jackass am I to sit here and think that I have a better idea of how good that player is going to be, is going to fit into the scheme, what we want, is going to fit into the locker room, when I've never met the dude. Deshaun Stribling didn't meet with John Lynch or Kyle Shanahan. Do you think anybody in the 49ers organization met with him? I bet you a bunch of people did. And they all got an idea for the kid. And I'll bet you that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan both talked to his coaches. They didn't want to let on how much they like him, so they maintained some distance. Doesn't mean they didn't get the information. They didn't talk to him directly, sit down one-on-one, so that means, oh, they didn't really do their deal. Come on. Come on. So, what's a good draft? 3 to 4 players, 5 or 6 maybe. One high-end, perennial all-pro. One just solid starter and a couple of guys who are rotational guys who contribute to the team. Because at the end of the day, what makes a good draft? You got a bunch of guys, 4 or 5 guys who are contributing to winning. That's it. That's all that a good draft is. A draft with several players who contribute to the team's success. Period. That's all it actually is. The other factors, part of the equation. Let's get into some of that. So what actually determines a good draft pick? Let's use this year as an example. Is Deshaun Stribling a good draft pick? Well, if he turns out to be a really good player, it's probably a good draft pick. But here's where we're going to get into that trope of it doesn't matter where you draft them as long as they're good. And here's why. If you could have gotten Deshaun Stribling at 58, then you didn't have to take him at 33. And you could have taken a different player at 33 who's also really good, like let's say EMW. They draft EMW at 33, and then they draft Deshaun Stribling at 58. You get 2 good players instead of 1. Why? Because you got the player at the appropriate value. Now, it turns out EMW actually lasted a long time too. Maybe that's a bad example. Maybe the 49ers take Chase Bisontis at the top of the round, and then at 58, you get Deshaun Stribling. Now you have your left tackle for the next 10 years potentially. You improve your offensive line, and you still got the wide receiver you wanted. That's proper value. That makes the draft that much better. That's why it does actually matter where you draft them. Whether if they're good or not, when the draft is over, yes, that's the mindset you have to shift to. After the draft, you have to shift into the mindset of, you know what? I don't care where he got drafted. I don't care if they reached. He just needs to be good. It's kind of all is for, as long as the player is good, nobody cares where he was drafted. That part of the trope is true. But it doesn't change the fact that you've potentially undermined your own draft if you're constantly reaching on players, because there's other players of requisite or better value, requisite or better talent that you could take at that spot and still get the same player who's awesome later. That's why it matters if you reach. The 49ers reach more than any team in football. What do I mean by reach? Again, context. Don't just throw out superlatives. What does it mean to reach? It means that the whole NFL says this guy's a 3rd round pick and you took him in the 2nd round. You reached. Now, there's reasons for reaching. If you're drafting at the end of the 2nd round at 58, you have a wide receiver who's been moving up boards. He was a 4th rounder a month ago. in every mock draft, every consensus, so on and so forth. And this dude has done nothing but this. Nothing but. Why? Because he put up great measurables, and everybody went back and took a second look at him. And they said, okay, needs to clean up his route running, needs to improve his route running, needs to maybe learn more of the route tree. He's got great hands. He blocks his ass off. He's got incredible speed and athleticism. Maybe this guy's a little bit better than a fourth-round pick. Then you dig into his character, so find out his dad was a drill instructor in the Marines, that he was raised right. He's a good kid. He's disciplined. He works his ass off. He's a leader in the locker room. Everybody in the locker room is talking about how he's the one who sets the example in the room for the whole team. He sets the standard. That's going to make so many players shoot up draft boards. That is why by the time the draft got here, Deshaun Stribling was a second to third round pick. That was the range that he was at. If you're picking at 58, it only takes one team who's picking at 57 to also think he's a second round pick. So at 27, the 49ers say that's too much of a reach. They trade back to 30. At 30, they said, still bit of a reach. Move back again, move out of the first round. Now you're at 33. 49ers want to move again. Still a little bit of a reach. They're literally telling you they think it's a little bit of a reach because they think he'll last a little longer. But if you don't get an offer that lets you pick in a range that makes you feel comfortable, you can still get him, then you just have to take the player. He might not have been available at 58. It throws everything I just said out the window. If you draft Chase Bisontis at 33, you might not get Deshaun Stribling. That's how the 49ers went about it, and I'm okay with it. That part of the process, I'm okay with. It frustrated me at the time. What are we doing? Why are we trading back? We're doing all this nonsense and then getting a third-round wide receiver. What are we doing? Well, do some more work. Do some more research. Listen to what some of the people are saying about him. I did that. I'm fine with the way that we got Deshaun Stribling, and I think he's going to be a terrific wide receiver who's a great scheme fit. He's going to play behind Mike Evans for a year or two. He's going to be our third down red zone guy. It'll be Ricky Pearsall. Mike Evans is our 1 and 2, and Stribling will probably slot right in as our third wide receiving option. He'll be like the fifth option in the offense behind Kittle and McCaffrey as well. We have some injuries. He may get thrust into a more prominent role. And we'll see what happens. But this guy has legit X-wide receiver value. Give him a couple of years to develop. This dude could be one of the best X-wide receivers in football. He's 6'2", 220. I'm sorry, 6'2", 207, I think. He's not quite that heavy. 6'2", 207, 10-inch hands, 4.36 speed, one drop all of last year in college football. He needs to clean up his routes. You think somebody with his work ethic, with his setting the standard mentality, isn't going to get better at running routes? I actually think Deshaun Stribling is an extremely high floor pick. It's a very safe pick for the 49ers at 33. Now, what makes a player a good draft pick? You take a player who contributes to your team in a meaningful way. That's all it is. A good draft pick is a player who contributes to your team in a meaningful way. That's a good draft pick. Now, how good of a draft pick depends on how much he contributes. Getting a perennial All-Pro is a massive contribution to your team. That's a much better pick. What's a bad pick? A bad pick is somebody who doesn't contribute to winning. Now, doesn't contribute to winning. Used a first-round pick on Reuben Foster, had some off-the-field stuff. It didn't work out. He contributed a little bit early on, but eventually you had to let him go. It's not a good draft pick. He didn't contribute enough to the team. He didn't contribute enough to long-term success to match the value of where he was picked. That's why value matters. If George Kittle hadn't panned out and he was never anything more than a blocking tight end and a solid number 2 tight end, that would have been a really good draft pick. Why? Because you got him in the 5th round. That's why the value matters. It's what you expect from somebody you draft in the 5th round. It ended up being an excellent draft pick. It ended up being a unicorn of a draft pick because he turned it out to be one of the best tight ends of all time, in my opinion. I'll have that video coming at some point this offseason. I've been wanting to make that for 3 years. How much do they contribute to the success of the team or not? That is the only metric that determines whether or not it was a good draft pick or not. That's it. So we can beat our feet against the ground, beat our hands on our chest. We can scream and yell if we don't like it. We can hoop and holler if we do. None of it matters unless they contribute or not. That simple. Now, a lot of people are frustrated with the track record as well. So we've talked about what makes a good draft macro. We've talked about what makes a good draft pick micro, individually. So let's talk about the 49ers and how good they actually are at drafting. So before I get into these draft classes specifically, I want to take everybody back for a minute. And I want to give everybody a little bit of context for this conversation. The 49ers stripped their roster down to, I believe it was 13 players. They stripped the roster down to 13 players when John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan took over. 3 years later, they were in the Super Bowl. 2019. 2017, 2018, 2019. Who are the key players on that 2019 team? The quarterback was Jimmy Garoppolo. Your primary running back that season, I believe Elijah Mitchell was later. So it would have been Raheem Mostert, right? So he's a free agent. Jimmy Garoppolo's a free agent. On the defensive side, Nick Bosa was a rookie. Drafted him. Fred Warner drafted him. We got, obviously, a lot of the players were held over from the other team, right? Jimmy Ward, DeForest Buckner, Eric Armstead, those guys. We used draft capital to go get D Ford. On the offensive line, you had drafted Mike McGlinchey. On the offensive side, you had drafted Deebo Samuel. You had drafted George Kittle. Almost all of the most important players on that team were players the 49ers drafted. Does anybody care where they were drafted? Of course not. But it does matter, because what if they had done a little bit better in that first draft where George Kittle was, essentially the only really, really good pick from that draft? Trying to think of who else was even in that draft that I could think of, right? The 2019 draft was excellent. You got Nick Bosa and Deebo in that draft. The Fred Warner draft was also excellent. You got multiple players who contributed. I think the 6th round DJ Jones in your first draft in 2017, also a significant contributor on that defensive line of that 2019 team. This is what I mean by one top-tier player, one solid starter, and contributors. That's a good draft. So they had several good drafts in a row. No, the only one that was home run would be the draft in 2019, we got multiple perennial All-Pros in Deebo Samuel and Nick Bosa, plus a couple of other guys who also contributed. It's how you build a championship team. You need 3. You need 3 drafts in a row where you have a good draft. 1 All-Pro, 1 starter, 2 contributors. You do that 3 years in a row, scatter a couple of free agents in there, and you have a contender. That's all it takes. But the 49ers got cocky. the 49ers picked for 3 years in a row, 2021, 2022. I'm sorry. Yeah, 2021, 2022, 2023. Okay, 2021. Trey Lance, Aaron Banks, Trey Sermon, Ambry Thomas, Jalen Moore, Diamondor Lenore, Talanoa Hufanga, Elijah Mitchell. One player from that 2021 still on the roster. Talanoa Hufanga was an all-pro his rookie year, signed a big money deal with another team. Aaron Banks signed, he was a 4-year starter, 3-year starter because he redshirted, then signed a $20 million per year deal with Green Bay. Elijah Mitchell couldn't stay healthy. Diamondor Lenore, still your starting quarterback. Jalen Moore signed a $15 million deal with the Chiefs. Ambry Thomas still in the league. Trey Sermon's a backup somewhere. Trey Lance, we all know, one of the biggest busts ever. Unfortunately, it just is what it is on that one. So, 2021, 8 picks total. That's not a bad draft. Now, you weren't able to retain some of those players. They literally played themselves out of contracts. You have people out here talking about the 49ers. They have all these drafts where they don't have any of these players. I had heard somebody today say that in these 3 drafts, 2021, 2022, 2023, there are 0 players still on the team from that draft. First of all, that's not true. Diamondor Lenore is still on the team. Second of all, that's a really, really cheap way of saying what you're trying to get at, because several of these players just outplayed what the 49ers were willing to pay them. Now, that's a different conversation about roster building, but that's a really good draft. You got a perennial all-pro, perennial pro bowler in John Lenore. You got a 2-time all-pro. I believe Talanoa has made 2 Pro Bowl or all-pros now. You got a quality starter in Aaron Banks, quality starting running back in Elijah Mitchell, though he wasn't able to stay healthy. Like, that's a good draft. The Trey Lance thing kind of ruins that draft because he's actually worth 3 draft picks. So now it's kind of not a good draft because those other players don't compensate for the fact that you gave up 3 first-round picks for Trey Lance. Now you have your next year, and these next 2 are like pretty bad. 1, you have no first-round pick for 2 years. And 2, you didn't get what you were trying to get out of several of these picks. So let's go through it. 2022, Drake Jackson, Tyrion Davis-Price, Danny Gray, Spencer Burford, Samuel Womack, Nick Skell, Clea Davis, Tree Castro Fields, Brock Purdy. Okay? 2022, this draft is saved by Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy will go 2 Pro Bowls. I think he has 1 already. He will probably become a perennial all-pro at some point. His efficiency, if they put a good team around him, he will play hyper-efficient quarterback. He'll put up good numbers, and he'll be on a good winning team. He's going to make Pro Bowls. The stigma is starting to wear off about he can only win with a really good team around him because they did a pretty damn good job of winning last year. He put up pretty damn good numbers, and they were playing street free agents on the team with him, on the field with him. Terrible separation rates. Offensive line was not good. No running game. He still got it done. So you got Brock Purdy. Clea Davis, you got a guy that was a rotational guy every year of his career, gave you good minutes, had some injury issues. Nick Zagel, I'm not really sure. I don't really think that you can really consider him like a contributor because he's been on the team the whole time. He's kind of been practice squad and off and stuff. But he hasn't really contributed much at all. I don't know that I'd really count him. But Spencer Burford has absolutely contributed to winning. The top 3 guys, Drake Jackson, Tyrion Davis-Price, Danny Gray, none of them are on the team. None of them really ever contributed anything to the team whatsoever. So basically this entire draft class is Brock Purdy and then Spencer Burford, right? Starter, but sort of borderline starter, and a couple of borderline role players in Clea Davis and Nick Zakel. So all in all, it's a good draft because you got your franchise quarterback out of it. But you got him in the 7th round. Was that kind of more lucky than good, maybe? So I don't know that I'd qualify that as a good draft, right? So let's say bad draft there. Got a little lucky on that one. 2023, 9 picks. Jair Brown, Jake Moody, Cameron Latu, Darrell Luter Jr., Robert Brill Jr., D. Winters, Braden Willis, Ronnie Bell, Jalen Graham. Okay. 3rd round pick, Jared Brown was one of your starting safeties last year. Jake Moody didn't work out, but a dude is literally, he contributed to winning. He contributed to some losses, right? But you have somebody who is a contributor. Cameron Latu got nowhere. Darrell Luter Jr. actually gave us some really good minutes last year. He played himself into the contributor category last year. He gave us some good minutes and contributed to winning. And he was drafted in the 5th round. It's what you expect from somebody drafted in the 5th round. So, so you got a starter, contributor, and you got D Winters, who played really well last year, just got traded to the Cowboys, not on the team anymore. They're going to say, well, that's another player not on the team anymore. But it's because we have 7 linebackers on the team. And we just brought Greenlaw back. What do you want? So, this draft's, not a great draft by any means. There's no all-pros, no perennial Pro Bowlers or all-pros. This draft is basically one borderline starter at safety who would probably do better in a different scheme where he's asked to do different things. A way overdrafted kicker who didn't pan out. And a couple of contributors, special teams guys, and D Winters and Darrell Luter Jr. So this is a subpar draft, but not a terrible draft. You got contribution out of 4 players and a starter. That's a halfway decent draft. That's not a terrible draft. And that's probably the worst draft of the entire regime. So, that was the 2023 draft, I believe. Right? So now, 2024. What do you need? You need 3 good drafts to build a contender. 2024, Ricky Pearsall, Renardo Green, Dominic Pudi, Malik Mustafa, Isaac Rendo, Jacob Cowing, Jarrett Kingston, Tatum Bethune. Ricky Pearsall, starter. If he stays healthy, Pro Bowl caliber wide receiver. Borderline, right? But solid starter. Renardo Green, solid starter. Dominic Puni has the potential to be a Pro Bowl caliber guard. When he's healthy, he is a Pro Bowl caliber guard. Fight me. Fight me. When he's been healthy, which is all but the beginning of last season. His rookie year, he was excellent, and he was very good down the stretch once he got healthy. If he stays healthy, he's a Pro Bowl caliber guard. Fight me. Malik Mustafa, he's your starting safety. I like Malik Mustafa a lot more than some people do. I love his game. I also loved him as a prospect, so that some of that is my own confirmation bias. But regardless, that's 4 starters, people who started last year. Meaningful starts, meaningful contribution to the team last year. 4 guys in 1 draft. Isaac Rendo, rotational role player, plays a lot of special teams. I'm not just talking about as a running back, plays a lot of special teams, and is one of your running backs who gave us some good minutes when he was called upon. Tatum Bethune played admirably last year in Warner's stead. He's a borderline starting linebacker. He's a guy you love having as your backup because you know he can give you some good minutes if he has to come in and play for a couple of games. 4 starters, 2 contributors. Jacob Cowing has had injury problems. We don't know what he's going to do. We do know that the reports out of camp last year were that you couldn't cover him in a phone booth. There wasn't a single person in the entire 49ers secondary last offseason who could cover that man. That's got potential still, but it's only potential. Can't count chickens before they hatch. You're still at 4 starters and 2 contributors. That's still an excellent draft. Last year's total of 11 picks. Michael Williams, Alfred Collins, Nick Barton, Upton Stout. Those are your first 4 picks. Next one after that is CJ West. Starter and Michael Williams, and in my opinion, will be a Pro Bowl caliber defensive end. He may not get the recognition because he may not get the sack numbers. He is one of the best edge setters in all of football out the gate. Best edge setter the 49ers have out the gate. He is, when you talk about the 49ers from last season, their pass rush fell off a cliff when Nick Bosa went down. but it fell off another cliff when Michael went down. It vanished completely. They had some semblance of a pass rush as long as they still had Michael Williams. That matters. In addition to that, their run defense took a bigger hit when Michael went down than it did when Nick Bosa went down. Now, in defense of that, Fred Warner had also gone down or went down right around the same time. So you lose Michael and Fred within 2 or 3 games of each other. Running, of course, your run defense is going to fall off a cliff at that point. Borderline Pro Bowl caliber player. It's my opinion. That's fine if you disagree. Okay. But solid starter. I think we can all agree. Solid starter. Alfred Collins, solid starter. Another person. I think he's a star. I think Alfred Collins showed up in the biggest moments last year from the jump. Needed to work some things out. He's a rookie. He had some rookie mistakes. He had some rookie up and downs, some rookie lumps. He consistently played well down the stretch. He did exactly what we drafted him to do. He still has some pass rush upside as we continue to get better. And now you put him next to an Osa Digizua, who is going to help mature that pass rush from the interior. And you still get the impact plays in critical moments because he's that kind of player. This is another borderline Pro Bowl caliber player. That's my opinion. That's fine if you don't agree. 2, at the least, solid starters. Nick Martin, don't know yet. Didn't play last year. Preseason came out, made some mistakes, then got better. I have never seen more improvement from one game to another than what I saw Nick Martin last year in the preseason. But then he didn't play the entire year. Who knows why? There's all sorts of reports. Maybe they get something out of Nick Martin. Maybe they don't. So, excuse me. So, there's no way for us to know for now. But in the same third round, Upton Stout. Starting stud corner. He's probably another Pro Bowl caliber player at slot. Made big plays, showed up in big plays, got better down the stretch. Within 3, by the time he gets to year 3, he'll be a Pro Bowl caliber player. Just like Alfred Collins, just like Michael Williams. This defense is going to be loaded with stud players in a couple of years, and they're all drafted. Fred, Nick Bosa, Alfred Collins, Michael Williams, Nick Stout, potentially CJ West if he comes on. All drafted players to make a core defense that'll be top 5 in the NFL. Mark my words. Even though we have a coordinator that's never had a top 15 defense, he will with this much talent. Fight me. We also got Jordan James. A few other players late. 49ers, they had some rough years where their draft did not go the way we expected. But when you actually take a step back and you look at all of this stuff objectively, okay, when you look at what actually makes up a good draft, look around the whole league. Don't just zero in on the 49ers and how good or bad they are against your own expectations, because that's all we're doing. As a community, as a 49ers community, we have our expectations. We don't feel like they met it. Therefore, it's a bad draft. Year after year. They have a terrible drafting track record. We just went through it. How bad is it? It's not that bad. There's plenty of teams that have way worse drafts than that. And those teams aren't going to NFC championships consistently. Those teams aren't winning 12 games on a team that is the most injured team in football. Because we have a core of players that are almost all drafted. 2 of them are not drafted. Trent Williams, Christian McCaffrey. Everybody else, from Brock to the wide receivers to Fred to Nick Bosa to the secondary players we picked up, all of them are drafted. Team wasn't that good that last year. There's a million reasons for that. It's not because the 49ers suck at drafting. Now, again, to be clear, this is not a defend the 49ers draft strategy. It is a, when you look at things objectively, it's not as bad as it seems, because I was on the march with all of you. I was freaking out. I thought the 49ers draft history is terrible. I thought I would take a more objective look and just, okay, first talk about what actually is a good draft. Once I figured all that stuff out, then I went back and looked at the history and was like, you know what? It wasn't quite as bad as I thought it was. It wasn't great. I'm not trying to act like the 49ers just knocking out of the park year after year and everybody just being haters. Not at all. Just saying it wasn't anywhere near as bad as we thought it was. The sting of Trey Lance not panning out lasted 3 years until we finally made another first-round pick. And then a lot of people didn't like the first-round pick because people got fooled into thinking it was Deshaun or DeJean, Cooper DeJean. Turned out it was Ricky. They're like, oh, what the heck? Drafted a wide receiver that doesn't really seem special at all in the first round. I get it. But 49ers are nowhere near as bad as drafting, as people are saying they are. And this draft, let's bring this all full circle. The draft the 49ers just had. Reach after reach. Fair. We got like 3 guys that were not a reach. Holson, Romello Height. Okay. These guys were kind of slated to go in that range that they went. There's one other guy I think that went kind of in the I think Gracen Halton was the best pick as far as where he was thought of. We got him after what the consensus was. So against the consensus board, the 49ers are reach after reach after reach. And the reason that means that it's kind of a bad draft is where you're getting the players matters. Because you could have drafted better, much better, had you not reached. So let's look at this. DeJon Stribling, a little bit of a reach, but I totally understand it. I understand why the 49ers got him there the way they did. I explained that earlier. Romello Height. This makes sense to me under one condition. That this was a Morris pick. This was a Raheem Morris pool party guy. And Raheem Morris knows exactly how he wants to use him. And he's not just going to be a DPR. This guy's going to drop back sometimes. He's going to be a pass down guy, rotational guy. You have people to set the edge. You have 4 defensive ends that can all set the edge. You don't necessarily have to draft a guy who can also set the edge. He's not that good against the run. Hopefully he improves. But even if he doesn't, in the 3rd round, you went and got a guy who could potentially get you double-digit sacks off the edge. And a lot of people have talked about, he was on a loaded roster when he was at Texas Tech. That's true. What do you call Fred Warner? What do you call Nick Bosa? What do you call Osa Odigizua? What do you call Alfred Collins? This dude's going to be playing in a front 7 with 2 Hall of Famers and 3 Pro Bowl caliber players. What are we talking about? You think the Texas Tech defense was better than what the 49ers are about to roll out next year? You're crazy. Romello Height, again, something that me and the coach are probably going to disagree on. He's not a big fan of Romello Height. I'm a little bit more of a fan than he was, but I wasn't all that gassed up on this pick either. I thought they were better. I would have much rather had a Danny Dennis Sutton. I would have rather had even like a Harold Perkins who went way later. So take somebody else here and take a Harold Perkins in the 4th or 5th round. I'd have much rather the 49ers did that. But that's not what they did. I have to assess what they actually did, and I'm okay with what they did here. And I think it's going to work out fine. I would prefer a different move, but I could have been wrong just as wrong. Those other guys that I mentioned might suck, and this guy might be awesome. We don't know. That's why it has to play out. Kaelon Black. Worst pick of the draft. I don't even care if he's good. Worst pick of the draft. Why? This is the guy that breaks that saying, it doesn't matter where you drafted him as long as he's good. 3rd round, 90th overall. This guy didn't get invited to the fucking combine. Do you know how you get invited to the combine? The teams all submit names. You have to get a minimum of 2 teams to submit your name to get an invite to the combine. That means that there are no more. The only team that might have submitted his name would have been the 49ers. No other team submitted his name. Otherwise, he might have been invited to the combine. So the 49ers drafted a guy. He's the third running back off the board. They drafted him in the 3rd round, 90th overall, and they have clear information that the vast majority of the league doesn't want to take another look at this guy at the combine. What the fuck are we doing? Even if you like this running back better than the other guys that some people like Mike Washington or the guy I was hoping they would draft in Claiborne, what makes this a terrible pick is not that Kaelon Black might be good or might be bad. It's that you could have drafted another high-end contributor at 90 and taking Kaelon Black in the 5th round. He has still been there. The dude might have gone undrafted. At the very least, he would have still been there in the 4th round. Oh, well, you don't know he would have been there. Well, you're not sure. I get it. With Deshaun Stribling, you're not sure if he's going to be there at 58 because he's just shooting up the boards. He literally turned down interviews because he had so many interviews because so many people are interested in him. Okay, I get reaching on him a little bit because you want to make sure you get your guy. This dude didn't even get invited to the fucking combine. Nobody's looking at him in the 3rd round. What are you doing? That's a terrible pick, even if he's good, because you could have gotten him in the 4th round and gotten another good player here. That's why it's a bad pick, even if he's good. That's why that phrase is stupid. It makes sense a week from now because there's no use crying over spilled milk. You have to just hope they're good, and it doesn't matter where they're drafted as long as they're good. That sort of holds some water next week, not right now. Right now, that's a terrible pick. And even if he's good, it's still a terrible pick. And the reason for that is because you could have gotten him anyway with another pick. Next one, Gracen Halton. Best pick of the draft potentially. Interior penetrating defensive tackle. He's going to play with Osa. He's going to probably play behind Osa. He's going to learn from Osa. We have CJ West. We have Alfred Collins. We have other guys on the defensive line, and you can go find a guy to plug a hole easier than you can to find someone who can penetrate. So you go get a penetrating 6'2", 6'2", 6'3", 293 pounds, right? 7 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, 7 quarterback hurries, okay? All SEC second team. 84 tackles, 16.5 tackles for a loss, 9.5 sacks in his career. 4 years with the Sooners. 4.82 combine. 36-inch vert, 300-pound man. 4.82 40, 36.5 vert. Excellent athleticism. Athleticism score is 9th in the class. 8.46 RAS for a defensive tackle is very good. You got him in the 4th round. That's a great pick by the 49ers. He's probably going to contribute from day one, and he may eventually be your starting defensive tackle. He has that kind of potential. He has that kind of ability. Round 4, Carver Willis. He projects to a guard. If this is your starting guard this year and he doesn't suck, this is an excellent draft pick. Even if he's just sort of meh, even if he's Aaron Banks or Burford, you got him in the 4th round. You hope he's better. It's an upgrade from what we had last year. As long as he's this much better than Burford, he's an upgrade over last year, and you got him in the 4th round. That's good drafting. That's a reach. Okay, probably a little bit of a reach. This is one of those where the consensus was much later. If he's good, what player was picked after him that the 49ers were on, that the 49ers were scouting, that the 49ers brought in for a visit, who else were they going to take at this pick or later that was going to have a bigger impact than a starting caliber guard for the 49ers if he turns into that? This is one of those that kind of does hold up. Doesn't matter if he was picked in the 4th round instead of the 6th. If he's good, the pick is fine. We're not talking about the 1st, 2nd, 3rd. We're not talking about day 2 here. We're talking about day 3 where there's this much margin between the guy picked in the 4th round and the guy picked in the 7th. Where they're picked does matter. 139, Ephesians Prysock. I'm up and down about him. His tackling is not great, but it has improved. If it continues to improve, he could be the complete corner the 49ers have been looking for. 4.45 40-yard dash, 39-inch vertical, 10.4 broad jump. He's long. He's explosive. A guy that runs, a guy that's nearly 6'4" and 196 pounds. So he's nearly 6'4", nearly 200 pounds. Is not supposed to move the way this guy does. He has the potential to be a lockdown outside zone cover corner. His length is going to change games if he can put it all together. 49ers went out and got a defensive back specialist and a defensive back-minded defensive coordinator. If anybody can get this guy playing to his full potential, it's the coaches we just brought in this year. I have a lot of high hopes for this guy. Jaden Dugger, he's next. Jaden Dugger, 5th round. This is also a massive reach. This guy might have gone undrafted. This is the kind of guy you trade back, you pick up a 6th or a 7th rounder, and then you draft him there. However, maybe they tried, maybe they couldn't. They only had 2 picks left at 154 and 179, both 5th-round picks. If you don't find a trade you like, just take the guy you like. 6'4", 6'5", 240 pounds roughly, right? Super long. This dude has straight up go-go gadget arms. His hands are hanging near his knees when you see him on tape. Relative athletic score of 9.6. This guy is a freak athlete with incredible measurables. He played at a small school in Louisiana. Okay. His production was not excellent. That's the caveat. This is the thing that makes this one weird. You have all that athleticism, and all those measurables, and you couldn't produce even though you played at Louisiana. That raises questions. If the 49ers can get it out of him, boy, real potential with this one. Again, could be a great 5th-round pick. And maybe my favorite pick of this entire draft was Enrique Cruz. I saw him run a sub-540 and was like, you know what? The number one position where the 40-yard dash time translates is offensive line. Studies have been done on that over and over again. The number one position where 40 times seems to actually matter. The better you run your 40, the better you are at playing offensive line. It's the only position where the 40 actually correlates for whatever reason. Doesn't make any sense, but do the math, look at the data, do research. It's a thing. I didn't come up with that. Somebody else did years ago. So anytime somebody runs a sub 5-second 40, I go watch the tape and I say, okay, is the guy just fast, or does he suck, or is he fast and he's actually pretty good? This guy's actually kind of good. 6'5", 6'6", 310, 315. I think 313. Yeah, 313 is like his measurables. 4.94, 40. Elite. 35-inch vert. Second amongst all offensive linemen. Production score, 64, which is 16th in the entire class. Athleticism score, 91, ranked 3rd in the entire class. RAS score of 9.87 to 9.99, near perfect. Projected as a guard as well, but might play tackle. Who knows? That's a great 5th-round pick. The 49ers have had some lean years as far as their picks, but their free agency in those years were also not good. The same time that they're picking a Javon Kinlaw, they follow that up a year or two later by going and getting a Javon Hargrave, and that didn't work out either. They had a few misses, a couple of more critical misses, like trading 3 first-round picks to go get a quarterback who plays 4 games for you, and then you trade him to another team. There's real questions about the 49ers process. I don't like it. I think the criticism is warranted. There are real questions about the 49ers consistently reaching against consensus. Apparently they don't care, but, well, the rest of us do. Because as good as your drafts actually have been, you've had solid drafts. Even your down years are not that bad. They could be so much better. The 49ers refuse to deviate from what they think a good player is, from how that player will fit into their scheme. And the thing that drives me nuts the most, well, we can't really draft it because there's nobody that we can draft there that can beat out the guy we already have. What? It's so stupid, and it's so arrogant. So do I think the 49ers are bad at drafting? No. Do I think that they have an arrogant process that needs a real overhaul? I sure do. That's pretty much it. If you've stayed this long, please subscribe the video, subscribe. It's very late. I'm very tired, and I'm sorry for the yawning. I wanted to get this out, though. I didn't want to let it linger. I'm thrilled about the season coming up. I think there's a lot of good things, and I'm going to be fighting with people a lot because I've got a much higher opinion of where this team is at right now than most people do, it seems. And it's going to be real fun to fight that out with everybody. I just hope the 49ers don't make me look like an asshole and suck all season long. Anyway, so like I said, subscribe, leave a comment. I try to reply anytime I see one. We're trying to build this thing up. I will be live with Coach tomorrow on Tuesday on the Neutral Zone, and I will be getting Coach on my show here on the Niner Narrative to go live with me. We're going to start doing lives at least once a week with different guests. Join us. I will have times and dates and all that in upcoming videos. Thank you so much. Have a good night.